We've been talking all morning, have we not, about the issue of Brexit. We are going to get to the Croydon cat killer, which, let's be honest, is probably prompting more interest from people because we are a pet-loving nation, if not a Theresa May-loving nation at the current time. Do you not think, James?
Yeah, and I don't want to get too Columbo about this, but it is a truly baffling case. There's part of me that's very suspicious about this. 3 years to figure out you think it's a fox that's been killing.
And we're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens. I think in the hundreds of cats being killed, and a lot of people suspect that actually it's not foxes and it is actually some horrible sadistic cat killer. Jonathan, I mean, whether you're a cat lover, a pet lover, or not, this is what is concerning the nation today.
Oh, indeed, that we are a nation of animal lovers. I grew up in a household with cats, and have always been a cat person rather than a dog person, I have to say.
Oh.
Even though I'm actually allergic to cat fur.
Well, there you are then. That wasn't an ideal start, was it? I'm sure you could sue your parents over that.
You spent a lot of time in Croydon.
I grew up pretty nearby, actually.
Hold on, we're going to be tracking what he's been doing on CCTV. I mean, we shouldn't be laughing about it. Genuinely, we are talking about people losing much-loved pets, but we'll talk about that very, very soon in this half hour. Of course, now let's turn our attention to the story that was actually made on the front page of at least one paper today, the Daily Star. Other papers also paying a lot of attention. The Croydon cat killer mystery finally solved by police. And after an investigation that was launched in 2015 into reports of mutilated cats in Croydon and the surrounding area, although there are many reports, 400 similar reports being made about cats being mutilated and killed across London and the surrounding counties, the force has concluded there was no evidence of human involvement and that injuries inflicted on the cats were likely to be the result of predation or scavenging by wildlife on cats killed in vehicle collisions. Basically, it's the foxes that are to blame. Well, let's talk about this with Chris Hobbs, former Metropolitan Police Officer who joins us now. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a very big mystery in the southeast for a long time. And again, we talk about the Croydon cat killer. That's the one that made the news over the years. But actually, it's been an issue across large parts of London and the southeast. I know there's an issue in North London as well. Cats disappearing or cats being found dead and mutilated. And a lot of concern that there was some sort of sadistic cat killer out there. Police say no.
It's a strange one, I have to say. I mean, I'm looking now at a tweet I received from someone who is anonymous, but I think from previous tweets is a police officer. And I would just read it to you. We're now looking for a fox carrying a scalpel and fresh chicken bait, skilled in the art of disembowelment and the removal of tail, ears, spine, etc., with surgical precision, who also leaves a signature mark on the animal's forehead, not to mention displaying said remains, so they are likely to cause maximum upset. So, now I don't know whether this police officer is from Croydon or not, and I don't know whether this is something that the officer has gained from first hand, but the whole thing is a little puzzling. We don't know really whether this human involvement is something that's sort of spread by word of mouth and rumour and has gathered momentum and the police have finally stopped it, or whether there is something more sinister involved. I think the proof of the pudding may be, of course, if we get further cases, which will perhaps be looked at by somebody else, and that may sort of define it one way or t'other.
Well, exactly. I mean, but some of the reports you're seeing on social media, people are talking about, bearing in mind the children listening. Let's people eating their breakfast. Let's keep the details to a minimum. But bodies of cats found mutilated and it tied up in plastic bags. But I suppose that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't done by a fox or another predator. It could have been someone who's trying to tidy up the mess and stop other people having to see it. We don't know, but it's an extraordinary amount of resources have gone into this. It's a big concern. We are a nation of pet lovers, are we not? And we are seeing hundreds of families have lost what will be beloved family pets.
Well, that's right. I mean, I haven't got a cat, but I do have one that drops in quite frequently.
Yes, we've got one of those. It seems to think that we own it.
Yes, and I will be very, very upset if something happened to this particular cat. And where I live, there are a lot of foxes. And I haven't heard of anything sort of happening, as it were, to any cats as a result of foxes. But equally, I think the RSPCA, I've just been looking at the Croydon local paper, or one of them, and it says the RSPCA concur with police findings. And you would presume that if they weren't happy, they would have said something. So the whole thing really, it is a mystery. I don't know whether this Jack the Ripper style mutilation of cats is something that has sort of spread by word of mouth. I suppose it's possible, isn't it, that someone that's done something, and as the bodies lay there, the foxes have then had a go at the body, as perhaps you would expect foxes to do. But the other thing I can say for poor old Croydon police is that they are getting a hammering in terms of knife crime, for example, and gang-related crime.
There are other priorities.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't probably be able to justify that to a cat owner, but I do know that officers there are carrying a massive caseload, and they do have all sorts of difficulties down in Croydon. So I would think they're possibly relieved to see the back of this, but of course it may not be. If owners are unhappy, of course they can complain. They can complain to the Met. It could go up to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. So if they, have tried to sort of close it down too quickly, then I suspect they'll be held to account. Yeah. You'd like to think that, of course, police would be confident, because there is such massive public interest in this, that they would say, well, we've gone as far as we can. There is no evidence of human involvement. We're going to have to close it, at least for now, because obviously if something happens again, they're going to have to reopen the whole business.
Although, let's be honest, the foxes are still there. Chris Hobbs, a former Metropolitan Police Officer, thank you for that. We bring in my guest, Jonathan Isabey and James McCrory. I don't know about you, I'm living fairly central. I've got a big garden, though, and we have a gorgeous family of foxes living in the garden. So there are 3 babies, 2 parents. Absolutely love. They I come home every day to find them sunning themselves on my lawn. I actually saw, if I pull up the blind in the bedroom and they sort of look round like I've woken them up, I find myself apologising to them because they seem to have taken up ownership. And they're actually beautiful creatures, but they are very, very dangerous. We've seen horrible incidents with babies, young people, even adults being attacked by foxes, haven't we? And a lot of people are absolutely convinced it's not foxes responsible in Croydon.
I mean, I'm always struck by how tame these foxes seem, and
brave.
I don't know if it's me imagining things, but I'm sure when I was a child, which was about 35 years ago, I don't remember seeing foxes in gardens being so tame. I don't know if it's because people are more likely to offer them food these days, which actively, really shouldn't be doing, because it encourages them.
But, I mean, James, so many people in cities now do have foxes in the garden. Obviously, people in rural areas have been living with this for years, having to protect their domestic fowls and the like. But a lot of people perhaps forget that foxes are wild creatures.
Yeah, and they've got, they're absolutely brazen. Jonathan's right, but they've got quite good PR, foxes. They're often seen as sort of cunning and really, really, really clever. And, they have settled in urban environments incredibly impressively. I have to say, I'm a bit suspicious about whether you can blame all of this on foxes. Are they a particularly aggressive bunch of foxes in the Croydon area, or they've been travelling
something in the South London water?
Yeah, it's when you had a guy on talking about them being able to use a scalpel. I mean, they're clever, but I'm not sure they're yet ready for emergency surgery.
I don't know. The ones in my garden, I reckon they could do that. Thank you very much.
First up, though, lots of people talking today about the so-called Croydon cat killer. I say so-called because the Metropolitan Police in London say it doesn't exist. Now, after some 400 reports of cats being mutilated across London and the surrounding counties in recent years, detectives looked in all those cases, and including 25 post-mortem examinations of cats carried out, but they have found no evidence of human involvement. And despite the fears that there was either a person or a group of people on the loose who were sadistically mutilating and killing cats, it turns out it may well just be the foxes responsible, but not everyone is convinced. Well, let's talk about this with Tony Jenkins. He's co-founder of SNARL. That's South Norwood Animal Rescue Liberty, who join us now. Good morning to you, Tony.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. Now, just explain to my talk radio listener that your organisation has been rather at the forefront of demanding police action on this issue, haven't you?
Yes, we have. Yeah, I thought we proved the case early on with the post-mortems. I think the figures you mentioned, 25 post-mortems. That's not correct. The current decision made by the Metropolitan Police is based on, I believe, only 5 bodies that were examined by a head pathologist at the Royal Veterinary College, and I understand evidence of fox DNA was found on them, i.e. saliva, but that doesn't necessarily mean the fox cleanly cut the head off. Foxes will predate any dead body that they come across.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, again, I understood the police said that they had carried out 25 examinations, but this is the issue, isn't it? It's completely understandable. We know that, foxes, they're certainly in city areas, getting very aggressive, and we know that they are certainly predators, and they're very likely to be responsible for some of the mutations, some of the damage to the bodies, or indeed some of the killings. But as you say, a lot of the owners have found their cats in a situation where they, as you say, have had, horrible to go into the details, especially for animal lovers listening, but decapitated cats, very clean cuts, stuff that would simply suggest that it was not the work of a wild animal. And many owners are absolutely convinced that their cat has been deliberately killed by a human.
Yeah, that's correct. And we've had an unfortunate level behaviours around some of the killings. For example, we've had cases where the head, the tail and the body of a cat has been laid out in a triangle, and we've also had foxes displayed in exactly the same way, with a patterns of behaviour which include body parts being returned a couple of days later. We've had rabbits found decapitated inside a locked hutch, for example.
Which would, suggest that it wasn't carried out by an animal. There was one point during the 3-year investigation, there was a £10,000 reward offered for information leading to conviction of those responsible. But you believe that whoever's responsible, whether it's one person or a number of people, and let's face it, this is happening not just in Croydon, across Greater London, Surrey, Kent, as far afield as Manchester, Birmingham, St Albans, and Northamptonshire as well, where these reports have happened. That these killers, these human killers, are still on the loose.
Yeah, well, you mentioned those geographical locations. Why is it that we've not had similar reports in Scotland, in Wales, in Devon and Cornwall, East Anglia? All of those places have foxes and cat populations in urban areas. So how come we haven't had killings or similar cases reported in those geographical areas?
And you're just saying this is all a bit suspicious. You want the police to look again? Are you convinced you'll be able to persuade the police to look again?
I think they've probably exhausted their resources for investigating this. We obviously would like them to reopen the investigation. They did. I was called into the police station yesterday, and when they announced to me their findings. But they did say that if positive evidence of human interaction is found, that they will investigate. So we're still hopeful.
Well, yeah, we'll wait and see. But I say certainly this is the talk of the country today. Tony Jenkins, founder of SNARL, that's South Norwood Animal Rescue Liberty. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.